This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer?
Experts in the Wire, episode 66. Tiffany daSilva. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 66 of Experts on the Wire. Recently, I've been taking fitness classes. You're already like, oh man, this guy's talking about fitness. But there is a point, the longest running of those classes for me being the Les Mills Grit program. It's basically perfectly described as a safe CrossFit for sane people. But there were some things I could just not seem to get better at, like squats, for example. But then I started taking this other class called CX Works. It's basically like a core skills class. And I almost instantly got better at those squats from the original class. Months of struggle was solved by just approaching it from a different angle. And that is the point of today's show, and that is the power of cross-discipline learning, and exactly why I invited a growth consultant onto Experts in the Wire to learn valuable insights from a different marketing field. I know there's some similarities between SEO and growth hacking, but when you really dig in, they're very different animals. This show is for anyone who wants to gain perspective and marketing ideas from the world of growth hacking, no matter your discipline, whether you do PPC, SEO, email, CRO. It will all help you with your marketing channel. So I sat down virtually over Skype with Tiffany to chat about growth hacking. This interview plays a little bit more like a conversation in a coffee shop. Maybe that's because Tiffany was in a coffee shop when we did this interview. So quick disclaimer, there is a little bit of background noise, what I'm actually calling ambiance for this episode. I do want to let you know I have greatly improved and updated our recording setup since this episode, which, by the way, is perfectly audible. It's definitely listenable, but you're just going to hear the occasional microwave dinging or maybe chair moving in the background. And there's my wife calling. So anyways, I'm going to wrap up this intro and take this phone call from my wife. Enjoy being a fly on the wall while Tiffany shares her definition of growth hacking, the best definition I've personally ever heard. When she explained it this way, I said, okay, I finally get it now. One small PPC campaign change that resulted in 50% year-over-year increase in leads. That's 50% year-over-year increase in leads. And tons more. We start with a story where I'm asking about how she made $5,000 in one summer in affiliate revenue at age 10. Hey everyone, I'm very excited to have Tiffany daSilva with us on the wire today. Tiffany, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. Did I just pronounce your name correctly? I hope.
Yes, you did.
I know I just asked you. So I'm very excited to have you here on the show with us today. We're going to talk all about growth hacking. But, and you gave a great presentation, by the way, a couple years ago where you have 5 brainstorm activities for growth hacking. But first, I wanted to go back and ask you about an interesting story from when you were 9. And you basically built an affiliate website. And am I correct to say you were making $5,000 in one summer by the age of 11?
It was like $500 to $1,000 a month, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So can you tell me quickly about that story? What was the site that you built and how were you making money off of it at age 9, 10, 11?
Sure. So this kind of summer started out that I had finally gotten the intranet after asking for it for so long, and doing all the free trials for AOL and Prodigy at the time. Finally, my parents just gave it to me, but I was so nervous that they were going to take it away for some reason. And so I wanted to show that, this thing is going to be useful. So after creating a couple of websites and kind of getting a feel for how websites worked, one day I had created this website just about me, and I started realizing that in search engines, if I put Tiffany daSilva, I can find myself and my website. So I started trying to figure out why that worked, and then I started looking at awesomest girl in the world, coolest girl in the world, and just the word awesome, just the word cool. That was okay, this is everything would kind of come back to the site because SEO was easy then. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to find a way of making my own little lemonade stand so that I can keep the intranet. And so I created this affiliate site. And when I was looking at the different options for affiliate sites, I noticed that CVS happened to have a ton of products, and they had like a really high percent. Like, I didn't understand the actual numbers behind it, but I saw like 10% in comparison to 2%. So I'm like, we're doing that one. And they had a bunch of products, but I didn't want to do everything. So I just focused on shaving products because that was the thing that showed up. So I put up this site and kind of sat there and waited. And you expect now that when you create a website, nothing happens. But because it was the early days of the internet, it was incredible. Like, people started coming into the site. And what I realized really quickly was that the people that were coming into the site weren't the women that I expected. Like, the site was pink and it was all girly products. It ended up being men. And so when the names started coming in and people started to actually purchase shaving products, I started to ask the question, like, why are you on this site? Like, what are you buying it for? And it's pretty scary when you think about it, that a 9-year-old is asking why you're on a girly shaving site. So it could have gone so much worse than it actually did. But they said that they were basically swimmers and triathlon and Ironman. And so they started telling their friends in these forums, and they felt that it was safe for them to buy it instead of going, at the time there wasn't the shaving products that men have now. So I turned the site around, made it black, and then it became this awesome site where people started showing up for a whole summer, and it started making a ton of money. And when you think back and try to figure out why it got the attention of men, the name probably had something to do with it. It was called Shave Star, which at the time I didn't really obviously put 2 and 2 together, but it definitely got men's attention pretty quickly. But at the end of the summer, I didn't understand money. So when I got all the checks, I thought it would come in cash because I'm 9. So when it came in checks, I didn't want to tell my parents. So I just got rid of the checks and went into 5th grade and called it a day. So
that is
it was
so funny.
Amazing.
So there seems like there's a key step that is easy to gloss over, but you said you just made a website. How did you know at 9, 10 years old how to make a website, and what did you make it with?
It was just simple HTML. Like, it was the ugliest site ever. And they gave you code in, like, the affiliate site would give you, like, the code to drop in. So I just started, every time I would hit a problem, like how to make it horizontal, how to align things, I would just look up that question and just and just solve small problem after small problem. And because I had all the time on my hands, I came out with a website at the end of it. But it was a grueling process at first.
Do you remember, so the domain name was, what did you say, Shave Star?
Oh. It must have been shavestar.tripod or angelfire at the time. It was, it was one of those.
I almost want to go to archive.org and look it up. Do you have old screenshots of it? Do you have that saved?
We were trying to look. When I worked at Shopify, we were trying to find it at one point. Yeah. And we'd go into Wayback Machine, and we couldn't find it. It was so depressing.
Yeah. And what search engine was that at the time? It wasn't Google. It wasn't
it was Yahoo and Ask Jeeves at the time.
Okay, that is funny. So that's great. And you wrote an article about that on Medium, which I'll link to in the show notes, which people can find at evolvingseo.com/wire. So you had the early sort of telltale signs of a growth consultant, right? You were asking questions like, why are the men showing up in this site? And then you changed, which then allowed you to make that sort of income from that. That's amazing. So I also want to ask real quick, on your LinkedIn page, you've got a lot of awards and certificates and lots of great stuff. But I was curious what the Tech Woman Canada Award is all about. What was that?
It's so funny because I had just started at Achievers, which was my first real kind of startup experience where I was working on my own in marketing. And one of this guy who was a developer at the time, who is now my really good friend, came up to me and he's like, hey, there's this award and it's Tech Woman of Canada, and I think you should try it out. And I was like, no, that is not me. I can't do it. And he's like, you know what? I'm not gonna leave you until you fill it out. So I filled it out and kind of bullet pointed all the answers just to kind of be like, I don't know who this guy is, let me get him off my back. And I guess because of this story, I got chosen out of a bunch of other girls. We all went to San Francisco, and we got to talk to VCs. We got to learn about how to grow startups, and it was interesting because for me, I didn't have a startup that I was promoting. So I got to really sit down with investors and be like, what are you interested in? And I would just be constantly asking them questions, and at the end, they'd be like, okay, who are you? What are you selling? I'm on it. Like I'll take it, which kind of taught me something where maybe it's important to sit back and instead of pitching right away, start asking the questions of what's important to you. And I love that experience because I did get to meet amazing girls who I'm still in touch with now. And watching them kind of still create their startups. And by the time it came to me creating Flojo, which is my own marketing publishing company, I had a place where I knew where to start. And again, that asking questions thing, I'm the biggest question asker and the most annoying person when it comes to that. So it's kind of a trend you'll find in every story where I was just curious and started asking questions.
Sure, yeah, it must give you a lot of leverage to not have something you immediately need and then be able to, like you said, just ask and listen. And one thing I noticed is you ask a ton of questions in Growth Hackers, and I was just curious if that's something, is that sort of how you approach the world? You just ask a lot of questions, you try to take in as much as you can and learn, and obviously you apply that to your growth hacking skills as well. Is that something you've always just been in the habit of doing?
Yeah, and I think that people get so afraid, especially as they keep going up in their career, that they can't ask questions anymore because people are kind of looking up to them. And I kind of got into that when I was director in an agency. I started kind of feeling a little bit nervous to start asking questions now because I didn't know if they were basic. I didn't really know, especially like SEO, something I've been doing for so long. You kind of get lost in some of the new information that's coming in, and you're like, is this a thing? Like, should we care about this? And when I left and started consulting on my own, we kind of created this Slack group where it was a bunch of us digital marketers, and I started asking those basic questions again, just to kind of see like what I know, is it real? And what I noticed is a lot of the people were like, oh man, I've been wanting to ask that question for so long, and it wasn't a simple answer. A lot of the times people were still debating over the same issues they've been debating for 10 years, and it's good to hear all the different sides. So I think like it teaches you that, you can't be afraid to just ask those basic questions and ask those things, because that's how you learn. And that kind of, even going past that fear of asking, makes you kind of, you feel a little like you failed, but you remember that insight so much more clearly, and you can attach it to everything else you know. And when you're doing something like going from SEO and PPC and CRO and email, like the things that I've been doing, you kind of have to ask all those questions to know how they all link together as well. So I will, if I'm doing something with PPC, I'm going to be asking the email person a bunch of questions about how, if I do this campaign, what do you think we should do? Like, what's the best case scenario? And what's the most realistic scenario aside of that? So, I love hearing people's answers and perspectives.
So you're currently, is your full-time thing now, you're a growth consultant? Mm-hmm. And so I was curious, so you worked with Shopify, I'm going to ask about that in just a moment. But I'm curious, and I want to get a little perspective on so you're the first independent growth consultant that I've interviewed on the show. I've had other growth hackers on the show, but nobody, so like myself, I'm sort of an independent SEO consultant. I'm curious what your sort of day-to-day, what your job looks like now doing growth consulting. Do you have like a handful of clients that you work with month to month? How does that look for you as a growth consultant?
In pure growth hacker fashion, I'm kind of making it up as I go along. One of the things that I think was really important probably to note beforehand is I don't look at growth hacking the same way that other people do. I think that the same traditional marketing things are still in play. It's just that you're kind of doing it faster with a little bit, less budget, and you're just trying to get it out the door and doing little steps along the way. A lot of the cases that the companies that I'm working with already have the product fit, already have those things that maybe it's not gelled, and we have to kind of ask some questions and kind of get a better perspective on it. But, a lot of cases, we're still doing SEO, we're doing PPC. It's just that I'm coming in and saying, okay, this is a full picture of what you need to do. Let me help you move, kind of grow in these different areas. So one thing that I do when I come in, I do audits. So whether it's SEO, PPC, and just create that year. Like, okay, if all goes like, if it all doesn't go to shit, pretty much, like, this is what you could be working on every month, just so you have a plan. So you do that with SEO, you do that with PPC, you do that with analytics, even just to make sure you even have a foundation to start all this. And then when we put it all together, we say, okay, what can you do? What can we attack now? What's the highest priority? And I don't do retainer. I've been on the other side of, either in startup or in an agency, where the retainer is you start high and you have nowhere to go but down. Like, even if things are amazing and you're not doing that much work into it, you're still getting blasted as that budget line that, why do we pay this person for? Even though we've gotten these great results last month, what have you done for me lately? So I take everything in project form, because it's not my goal to, that like number goal that you have in your company is not my goal. It is your goal, and you need to find a way of growing your company on your own. So I'm just there to support it. So if you can't get stuff done, I will then take on the projects of, let me do all the meta titles and descriptions, so you never have to think about it again, and I'll just give it back. Let me get you a bunch of links for the next, 6 months, and then it's on you. So I just take on the little things, and then I will help. I'll be that person on the side, that freelancer you want to hire but you don't trust, that has done everything, and then I'll and you kind of hack it together. You hack your growth together, because you don't have to think about that stuff anymore, and you can go deep on something else. So I definitely take it on growth consulting differently, and when people do come to me and say like, hey, that Airbnb hack, have you heard of it? Can you do something like that with me? And I'm like, no. Like, bring in a bunch of university kids together, pay them with pizza, and they don't know the rules, and you're going to get a growth hack from that. And it's probably going to be more awesome than anything I can come up with, like sitting in my in my condo doing work with my dog, hanging out. So it's just, I definitely kind of approach it a lot differently than other consultants out there.
I'm curious how many projects you work on at once, because even just doing SEO, I get very overwhelmed just having to keep track of SEO and do only SEO for clients. So are you working on multiple projects at once? Because I imagine there's there's probably a lot of things going on. I mean, you're talking about SEO, email, PPCs, how do you manage all of that, and what's kind of the scope of work you're doing at once?
I usually do about 3 to 4 audits a month. And I also do whatever the project work that we're doing. And sometimes I'll take on like a PPC client on retainer for about 6 months to a year, just to kind of get them going. And usually tell them to hire someone after to kind of take it over from there, because I can usually optimize it. But I like that. I like jumping around. If I was doing just SEO or just PPC, I would get bored and I couldn't be as productive as I am. So one of the ways that I work is I do a little bit, just push the needle. Today I'm going to push the needle on this, and I'm going to push it forward. So I do that every single day with whatever clients that I'm working with at the time. And every time I get bored with one, even during the day, I'll switch gears. And I end up, you get a nice 5-6 hours of work in, but you never feel bored because you're doing all those things. And that's why when I did in my career, I always kind of took on jobs that were, SEM and SEO manager, or online marketing manager. So I'm doing everything at once, or strategy director. So I'm handling all the strategy, because I just can't. I'm not one of those detail-oriented people that can focus on one thing for too long.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So we are going to get to some of these brainstorming tips in just a moment. I want to ask though, when should a company consider hiring a growth hacker or consultant or whatever you want to call it, versus just an SEO, or versus just a, how would you advise a company to choose one or the other?
I think it's when you're about to make a major change. So if you're doing a website redesign, or you're looking to hire a whole bunch of new people, that's when I come in, and usually I'll do all the audits, so that no matter what, that person's going to have their own ideas and they're going to want to do stuff. But on day one, they can do the audit, they can watch a video about all the research that I've done, and then they can from that point on say, okay, from here, if I wanted to jumpstart and do something on day one, I could. But from there, I might kind of take a step back and take that information and use it to propel me forward to new insights. So that's why I love working right before new hires are hired. But on the other end, I also like when a redesign's happening, because we can look at what mistakes you made in your last website. And people hate that. They're like, oh, we're not done yet, so don't look at it. I'm like, no, because you will make the same mistake twice. So let's look at the mistakes you made, make sure you don't make them again. And let's look at new content and new structure for your website as well while we're doing it. So that, new site architecture, because no one ever thinks that. They think that they're, kind of working on the design, and they're so focused on that you'll have every page is on the root directory, and you're looking at a sitemap that's just gross to look at. So I usually come in at those times because I think those are the times also when people are a little bit more open to looking at a consultant or just they're kind of lost and overwhelmed in the details of something that major that they just want something to be happening and moving in the background as well.
So we're going to get to these brainstorming tips, but just to put a little bit more context, can you give me your definition of growth hacking? I know that's a loaded question probably, but I honestly still don't quite feel satisfied in a definition that I've heard of growth hacking or really feel like I understand what it actually is. So can you give me your take on that, and maybe at the end tie in how do you compare it to just marketing?
With growth hacking, there's more urgency. Just the name of it's all about urgency, and it's all about, in a lot of cases, you're given a ton of money, or you're given this idea of going public, or whatever the case may be. So it's a very specific environment that you're in. So it's urgency, it's the environment, but also you're given a ton of options, like a ton of marketing options to do, and you really have to prioritize and decide, okay, if I'm going to move the needle in this extreme way, usually, what is the priority that I need to do right now? And in a marketing setting where it's a little bit more traditional, I mean, you have a lot of money usually, but people are kind of a little bit more slow. Like, we're going to take our time, we're going to do those things, and it's not going to be cheap and cheerful. And you can hire the big PR agencies to do stuff, whereas growth hacking, you have to be the kid that I was in 9 years old, trying to figure out, okay, I have no money, I have no nothing, like, how am I going to grow this thing, or how? And so it's a different mentality going in. It's a lot of that kind of trying to figure out your message, like, on the product side, you're figuring out your messaging, you're trying to figure out all that stuff at once. And on the marketing side, you're trying to just figure out what's the one or two things I can do right now that's going to grow. And then we'll worry about everything else. So what I love about kind of growth hacking teams is everyone jumps on something and for the next month or two, and they go all in. And that's the thing that they're going to try. People say that a good growth hacking team is something that's they're going to be jumping around and they're trying they're testing all these things. Like, no, they're testing one idea and they're trying to find the best solution for that one idea, and that's the other thing. So you have your urgency, you have your environment, you have your huge audacious, you're literally working in BHAGs all the time.
Big, hairy, audacious goal, right?
Audacious goals, yeah. And you also have this kind of idea that we're going to keep testing and we're going to find the exact right approach. So that's how I look at it. And a lot of people kind of take this first part, that product market fit, or they just think it's like the Airbnb hacks, which worked for them at the time. And that was one of their ideas that they propelled forward and tested. But it's not just that.
I see. I love the urgency part of that you mentioned, because I've never quite heard that element of time and speed brought into the definition. And I like that. I think that's something that helps me understand what growth hacking actually is and wrap my head around that. So let's get to these brainstorming tips for growth hacking. Again, it was a presentation you gave. I'm going to link to the video and your slides in the show notes. It strikes me that the goal of this presentation was to give people brainstorming ideas, like things they could do to come up with maybe things they could test, or maybe like channels or whatnot. So is this beginning brainstorming process really key to what growth hacking is?
Oh yeah, of course. And I think like when I was, I just recently created, it's called Flojo, and it's a growth hacking box of 100 ideas where you can growth hack. And the most important section is the first section, which is the think side of it. They have think, acquire, convert, whatever. But in the think side, it's where those ideas are going to happen, where those, Craigslist, Airbnb, the Hotmail ideas come from. It's the way that you're thinking. It's bringing a group of people together, and you're not doing a presentation, and you're kind of doing these off the wall things that forces someone to think outside of the box. And that the purpose of that talk that I did was I wanted people to learn how to think differently, and then create these little exercises that are based on psychological theories that will force your team to come up with neat things, but also fail in front of each other and feel open with giving their ideas in different ways. And I think so important to coming up with those big ideas. Those happen when that one person in the room who's super quiet goes, I have something, but maybe it's really dumb, but I'm just going to say it anyway. And you're letting that person shine because of the way that the activity is structured.
Nice. And yeah, I do want to chat about Flojo in a moment at the end there. So the goal here is to give people ways to come up with these big ideas that you're talking about, test them, fail them, whatever. So you've got 5, but there's a bonus in the video that we might get to at the end there. So what is the first brainstorming tip here? In the bullet that I have in my notes here, it's 100 marketing ideas from 6 to 10 non-marketers. Can you expand on that idea, and what are we talking about doing here as a process for getting these 100 ideas?
So I love to bring people in general that don't have any idea what we do, or even different people in the company together to come up with new marketing ideas, because when you're working with your marketing team, they're all using the same language. They're all saying the same thing. They're all using the old stuff that they've done a million times. But when you start bringing in a group of different people and you're asking them, I'm going to force you to come up with like 20 ideas, and we're all going to put them on it. And at first you get a bunch of people who are super scared and going like, oh my God, you guys are marketers. Like, that's your thing. But in a lot of cases, when you don't know the rules, you can break them so easily. So by getting those marketing ideas and putting like 100 ideas on the table, and then starting to take away from them and being like, okay, let's break this down into smaller groups until we have like 10 that we're going to do. I think that it forces you to just come up with something that you might not have, not only that you might not have done ever, but it forces marketers to be like, okay, wait a second, how would we do this? This is actually pretty cool. And it's kind of that same reason why you bring a bunch of university kids together. Like, I love doing that because they're eager, they're inspiring, they're motivated to do something, and they come up with the weirdest stuff that you're just like, that sounds awful. Wait, no, I think we can actually do that. That would be cool.
To bring in a tangible example, so I'm working with a company that restores and sells pianos, which is close to my heart because I'm a pianist. Mm-hmm. And would the idea here to gather up people in this company, the technicians that don't know anything about business, or the owner, maybe even customers, to bring in all kinds of people involved with the business, and just you bring them in the room and you just ask them for ideas of like, how would you market? Do you try to get specific and say, what content would you create? Or like, how specific are we getting here when we're brainstorming?
When you start, you're asking them kind of leading questions like, what do you like about the product? What are you kind of getting them warmed up?
Okay.
Because you want them not to be, if you notice that they get really stalled on this, like trying to create these amazing ideas, you kind of have to shift focus a little bit and be like, what works for you? Like, what was the last thing you bought? How did you buy it? And why do you think that's the case? Because when they're explaining it, they're not going to explain like, oh, it was a remarketing campaign that did this. They're going to say something about the ad that triggered them to do those things. And then you kind of get that going. And then when you say, okay, what would you do if we were going to be selling these pianos? And then that's when they're like, oh, well, that thing that I did, okay, maybe we should do this and this and this. And so you don't want to kind of, definitely don't want to bring people in a room and just look at them and be like, okay, come up with 20 ideas to look back at you and be like, oh my God, this is terrifying. But just having that conversation, having a really good person in the room that's kind of constructing the environment and making it really easy to speak is really important.
So you open up to like a broader conversation. You talk a little bit beyond just marketing. So maybe a customer comes up with some idea like, oh, I saw this product, at a town fair the other day. So like, why not like ship a piano over to like, the farmer's market? And like maybe they come up with some weird out of the box idea, but for some reason, maybe it's actually a good idea.
Yeah, and then you as a marketer is going to say, oh my God, that'd be great on YouTube. And we should do a Facebook ad that shows that. So like immediately you can take their idea, which they think is not marketing or not digital, and you can switch it. And then it becomes this amazing idea that will totally work.
Yeah.
So that's why you need those people in there.
Maybe I'll try that idea I just came up with.
I like it too.
I wouldn't have even thought of combining it with YouTube or Facebook or something. So there's some
good.
brainstorming in action right there.
I know. You heard it, folks.
So the second brainstorming tip that you give, and this one was interesting to me because you say that when you're confronted with a problem that your sales or your conversion rate's dropping, you recommend to just ask your site visitors, this hit me as interesting because when I think of growth hacking, I think of like technical spreadsheets, data, tools and things like that. But you're just saying to ask customers. So how can this be beneficial for people when they're trying to figure out these problems?
Yeah, I'm the emotional growth hacker, so data is important, but I always like to link the person to it. I think, well, first of all, you are taking that data and you are saying, okay, what demographic first? First, let's look at what demographic is affecting this, what area, whatever, and let's maybe ask those specific people, because it could be something where you notice right away that it's a mobile issue. Okay, let's get everyone that's in mobile and ask them, what's stopping you? Or is it a certain device issue? What is it? And you start asking them. And you really, it's a weird situation because you don't at first want to take that one person. Sometimes people listen to like 10 answers and they think those are the only 10 answers in the world and that's it. Take it a little bit with a grain of salt and say like, what is this actually telling us kind of higher up, like big picture view, and then work from there. So I think it's important when you're kind of doing these asking, and there's different ways to do it, whether you're using like a Qualaroo or Hotjar, there's all these ways that you can ask people, or even emailing them. I love emailing and just being like, if not only emailing people that have used your software and being like, what almost stopped you? Like, is there something that you think like I really value the fact that you just signed up, and we know it might have been difficult for you to do so. So why did you do it? And then on the other end, maybe just asking a bunch of people like that you've been trying to target and you can't, and saying like, we have a problem. We can't seem to get you as a customer. Can you tell us why? And then kind of get answers that way.
So I'm gonna bring another example. I'm gonna give you a second actually, because I wanted to ask if there was an example of this at Shopify, and I'm gonna give you a second to think about that. If not, no worries. But so I have a client that's a sales recruiter, and their whole goal is to get leads, right? It's B2B lead generation. So are you saying that if they're noticing that one of their lead pages is not converting very well or at all, or that's dropping, that they should identify the actual people that were on that page and then somehow contact them? Like how do you, technically speaking, how do you do that? How do you ID the people that showed up, but they didn't do anything and they just left? How can you find them and then reach out to them?
Okay, so when you find out whatever that demographic is that you might be having problems with, you can make sure that your Hotjar is set up, or whatever tool you're using is set up to focus on maybe that demographic if you can, especially when it comes to device. It happens a lot with device.
And what is Hotjar as a tool? What is that? I'm not familiar with Hotjar.
Oh, it's a tool that you can do heat mapping, kind of asking people questions. There's a bunch of different tools within, and it's all for kind of CRO purposes and UX purposes. It's a great, cheap and cheerful tool. There's all the other expensive ones, but this one has kind of everything combined, and I love using it because I can get a full picture right in one space. But on the other side too, like sometimes you can't talk to that person directly. So I'll go on user testing. I'll ask for that specific demographic, and then I'll ask them to walk through.
Oh, you can ask for demographics on user.
Yeah.
Is it the free one, peak.usertesting, or is this a paid version of that?
It's called usertesting.com, and it's paid. It's like $250, I think, for like 10. But when you find those specific people, walk through it, ask a bunch of questions to them, and you're getting it fresh, which I love. And you're kind of
the one where they're recording a video of them using your site, right? And then they're talking through it and they're answering the questions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you mentioned another tool, Qualaroo. What does that tool do?
That is a pop-up tool that as you're about to leave the site, it'll pop up either in an overlay or in the corner, just a little box that says like you can ask any question to the person. So we use that not only in the what's stopping you, but sometimes like Shopify would use it just to ask questions about what did you like about this, what would you change, and you just kind of can get some feedback.
These are all what we're trying to accomplish here is solving the problem of figuring out why people are not converting or not taking a certain action. And in your presentation, you mentioned 4 types of users. And I love this, and this might tie a little bit into the giving users the feels slideshow I want to talk about in a little bit. But I like this because you said you called yourself the emotional growth hacker. I forget the exact term you used. Maybe that was it. But I love that because I've been thinking a ton lately about the emotional right brain side of things when it comes to how people are taking in information, how they're engaging with websites. What are these 4 types of users? And if you need me to cue you, I'm happy to do that. But I'd love to chat about these for a second.
Okay, so the best way of thinking of it is when someone comes onto your site, they're either going to be fast, slow when they're looking at stuff, or they're going to be logical or emotional. So there's the one side of things like the fast, logical person who's competitive. They have a certain personality. When they're going in, they just want to get things done. They don't even probably scroll. They're like skimming everything, and then they're like, okay, yes or no. And then like I like to think of it as that like, I don't know, that like finance guy who's like trying to make money. Is this going to make me money? Yes or no? Gone. And then you have the fast and emotional one who's spontaneous. So this is that person that's just going to be like, either you kind of hook them really quickly with something, or they're scanning up and down. They're like, oh, is there anything I can attach myself to? No, out. Then on the other side, you have the logical, slow people. And these people are like, I never really optimize for them, because no matter what you put, they're going to read everything right down to the terms and conditions and policies. And they're a little bit on the kind of, they're looking for what's wrong with you. They're the people that write you and say, just so you know, you have a grammar error on this page and you should probably fix it because I don't trust you now because of it. Like they have their...
So they're like lawyers, probably.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the other side, you have the emotional emotional slow people. Did I say that? Yeah. Where they're humanistic. They're looking for something that's going to tell a story. They're going to look for testimonials and social proof. And they're like, I always think they're like the hippie one that's like, I'm not going to trust you unless I really like what you're saying. And a lot of people get hooked on saying this doesn't work, or not to think, and I don't want you to think of this as it's the end all be all. It's just a guide. And you can pick the guide that you want and you can stick with it for a test or two. It might not be the only one out there, but I usually just use it because I like that framework of having those 4, and because I've seen it in action. I might not be competitive in when I'm looking at sneakers, for example. I might be more humanistic and looking at social proof and all that stuff. But when I look at business stuff, I am totally competitive. I have no patience whatsoever. If you haven't caught me in the first 3 seconds, I'm out. So I think getting to know how those people work, and also watching yourself and seeing in what situations am I like this? Because you'll find that you do kind of fall into those 4 categories, which I really like. And when you start testing, you're testing things like on the competitive side, is everything above the fold? Can I get all the information I need above the fold? Can they look at it and go, yes? Or on the emotional side, can I put a social proof somewhere? For a spontaneous person, is there a 1, 2, 3 I can get them just to hook them so that they know what the steps are, so that I can, it's to capture their ADD, just so that they know where to go next.
And is this where you would actually construct different landing pages that you would serve to different types of users? Is that, or how do you reconcile the fact that roughly 4 different types of people? How do you target all of them?
For the slow people, I focus on the second half of the page for them, because they're going to scroll there anyway, so I worry about that. The above the fold is for the people, the competitive and the spontaneous person. If I can get the spontaneous person to click through something, I can usually give them videos or whatever on the next page that would catch them. So if I do take the next 3 steps and you can see this video, they're like, yeah, let's see it. And they'll go. And then you can have a page dedicated to them. But at first I wouldn't. I would just kind of have all the information there on that one page.
So you're not having different pages for each type. You're actually placing things in certain spots for each type of person. I really like that, because it does consider the type of person that is going to scroll, the person that is going to click and want the video. And just to sum those 4 up again, it was spontaneous, competitive, methodical, and humanistic. And people can see you talk about that and in your slides as well in the links. So one of the next parts, you say you should determine, are you this or are you that? And I believe you're talking about deciding who or what you are as a company. So can you expand on this a little bit, and then how does it fit into kind of the growth hacking side of things?
A lot of times people don't necessarily know what they are, and they start using these like marketing words or like the business words describe themselves. So when you're trying to decide like who you are, and you're trying to, especially talking to different people in the marketing team or in the sales team, and you're not really getting any information, you're just getting the very generic information out of them. Yeah. I have to then kind of break it down and go, okay, wait a second. Like, is it this? Or is it that? Like, are you more of a Airbnb style company? Or are you more of a that? And then like, you just kind of, you keep asking these types, is this for like a hotshot lawyer? Or is this for like a mindfulness guru? Like, you know, you start asking those type of questions, and then you can kind of get closer to not only the persona that you want to go for, but just answering a lot of questions about who you are. Because then when you get in a room and you're like talking about those things, you'll start seeing people going like, oh God, no, we're not that. And so you have this idea of who you are, but sometimes you can't put it into language as easily, and it's like a gut feeling.
It seems like it would be effective to, like what you said, present somebody with the opposite of what they think they are, and then you're going to get that reaction. Like if somebody were to come to me and say, you're the Walmart of SEO, I'd be like, no, I'm definitely not the Walmart of SEO. So that seems like an effective thing as well, like show what the person's not, and then they have something to react against.
Mm-hmm. And then use that in marketing. Like, we are not this. We are this. You know, like, and maybe sometimes when you're just saying something like, this is who I'm not, people are like, okay, I get it. Like,
yeah. There's a guy named Jay Acunzo who does a podcast called The Unthinkable, and very transparently to my audience, when he first started, I was a little jealous of his podcast. We launched the same week, almost a year ago today, and
congrats.
Thank you. His show is very story oriented, right? So like he says right in his podcast, no growth hacks, no CRO techniques, no SEO tricks. And I almost wanted to retweet him one day and say, if you want the show with the growth hacks, come to my show. You know what I mean? And interesting stories. So, but he kind of did that at the beginning. He was very, very upfront about saying, this is a marketing podcast that has no SEO hacks or tricks or anything like that in it. And it did get a reaction out of me, which I think is interesting. So next I want to jump to something interesting you talked about in brainstorming idea number 4, where you're actually comparing traits of CRO and psychology, and you have it labeled how to be an expert in CRO. So I'd love for you to explain why psychology and CRO have these similarities, and then what does CSI have to do with all of this?
So a lot of times when people are trying to be an expert in CRO and they're looking at online, they get overwhelmed by these ideas of like conversion rate and heat maps and A/B testing and landing pages. But when you really start to break it down and think about some of the aspects that make CRO really what it is, it's really all about psychology. And there's that idea of, okay, how do people make decisions? Like, how is there a way that people are thinking that might be irrational where they come to you? How does your brain actually work? And I think you need to start thinking a little bit, I guess, of it's that kind of bigger picture again, of what we can get CRO data by heat maps and A/B testing and stuff. But what the bigger question is, why are people thinking or acting the way that they do? And one of the things that I'm obsessed, the only way I fall asleep at night is by watching CSI Law and Order. It's been like a 10-year thing. It doesn't go away. I've seen every procedural police show ever. But what it teaches me every day is that, like, you know, there's a beginning and an end to something. There's steps that you need to take to solve this problem. And it's very, like, when I watch it, everything I approach is very like, okay, you're going to do this, 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 and that. So what this millions of hours of CSI and all this stuff is actually teaching me is how to structure different projects, how to think about something in different ways. Like when you're watching like the Elementary or the Sherlock, like how you use other observations to come at a problem. And even though people would look at it and be like, you're watching awful TV, there's something that's happening in the background that I'm really learning about. And I think that's the hook, and that's why people love the shows, right? And the same thing happens with CRO or with growth hacking. It's all about thinking, how people think, how people act, why do they do those things. Yeah. So that's where CSI comes in.
And how they react. There's a show I want to recommend to you and all the listeners, for anybody that's into that. It was called Chance. It was on Hulu with what's his name there? The guy that was Dr. House.
Oh yeah.
Hugh Laurie. Great show if for anybody that's into that kind of psychological problem solving, what's going to happen next, suspense type of thing. I think you would like that based upon these things. It only ran for one season. Nobody knows, I think, at this point if it's going to go another season or not. But it plays like a 9-episode movie, which is really interesting. I like it a lot for that aspect. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you compare conversion rates to decision making. And when you really break it down, that's all people are doing when they land on a web page. They are trying to decide, should I buy this thing or not? And I think you're absolutely right. Anybody doing CRO can learn a lot from studying psychology, whether it's from movies or formal or any aspect they can get into that. You mentioned a really great recommendation. When you encounter a problem that you're trying to solve, you talk about thinking in opposites. And I really like this. And can you talk about the example that you gave where if you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out what marketing action to take, but you don't have the budget? What's the flip side solution to that problem? I really liked this example.
You start thinking about, what if I had all the money in the world? And what if I had $1 billion? What would I be doing? And you always kind of think, or you can do it that way, or you can look at something like, what if we had the worst product ever? What would that look like? Okay, since we don't, what's the opposite of that? And like, what would be the best product? And because sometimes when it's breaking out of those generic business marketing terms that people keep using to describe their product. But when you're talking about something awful, or you're talking about something with a gigantic budget, all of a sudden your ideas come out of all these ideas going, oh, we would do this, or we would do that. And you sit back, and in a lot of cases will be like, actually, like, you could do that with the budget we have. Like, that's actually, there's a way of doing that. Or sometimes people just don't know how much things cost. So when you bring up something like, okay, we have $1 billion, like, how much, what are we going to do? And they bring up something, you're like, actually, that's a $10,000 thing. And they're like, oh, really? I didn't realize that. So like, stop saying we need to do things cheap or we have no budget, because that puts people stuck in a position where they're automatically thinking numbers where they should be thinking ideas.
I like that. So would you say for anybody out there listening, whether you're working in a small company or on your own or at a big marketing department, you should maybe do this as a brainstorming activity? Like, just imagine you have all the money. Like, what are the things you would actually do if you had all the money? Would you suggest like writing that all out and mapping it out and prioritizing as if you had unlimited budget?
Sometimes I like to do, there's a couple of different ways. So yeah, we do that. What would you do? People have to sit down and actually write ideas, because I don't like when people are yelling out, because then you're taking away some of your group that might not like to call things out. So you write everything down, you put it in maybe Post-its, and you throw it in a basket, and you start going through them. Because in a lot of cases, you don't want the loudest person in the room, just their ideas to come out. You want to be able to say something and you kind of read the room. Are people saying like, oh, that's a great idea, but you don't know who's attached to it. So you need that, I think, for a good idea sharing. On the other side, I like to take, let's say what would the worst company do, or what does that look like? You write down an idea of what was one thing that the worst company does. You give it to the person next to you, or you kind of shift it so that someone else sees that, and they have to add on that and build like, what would that look like? So then you're starting to get a story of like what the worst company looks like. And when you kind of put that whole story together and you kind of read it out loud, people get this idea, okay, that would be horrible if we did that, but let's take some of these ideas and let's flip it. And like, what would that mean that we would need to do? And I think, yeah, it creates a safe environment, and it creates an environment where everyone's equal, which I think is really important.
I like that a lot. So again, I'm going to link to your presentation and the slides where people get the full picture of all the things we've been chatting about. I wanted to ask a couple quick questions about giving users the feels. As I mentioned before we began, we do a lot of research, and I just found these slides 5 minutes before we started our call. So I didn't have the time I normally have to dig into that, but I did want to ask a couple quick questions about these slides, because they're very entertaining and useful. Slide 25, and before that, you talk about something called a 5-second test. And then there's a slide where you show an example of a website, and I guess you're challenging us to figure out what this is about in 5 seconds. Can you talk a little bit about the 5-second test?
Sure. The 5-second test basically is if someone came onto your site, looked at it for 5 seconds and left, would they know what you do and what was the next step to do it? And I show, one of the examples I show is like a weight loss grants program. If you go on this page, it's like a mess. There's all this content, and it's just like 2 or 3 different calls to action, and you would go on there and go like, ugh, and then leave. And even though it's a company that's trying to give you money to lose weight, so like all they had to say was that, like, we'll give you money to lose weight, start now. Like, when you think about it, we don't need all that information. Like, tell me that later. But they ruin it by adding all this information. And there's different ways to do it. So you can use 5secondtest.com, which is a great tool, and you can see what people will basically write what they think the site's about, and you can see what the main themes are. On the other side, you can I do the squint test if I'm by myself, where I take like 5 steps back, squint my eyes, and say like, what are the things that are popping out right now? And you can kind of do it for yourself, or you just put people in a room, do it like for different websites or pages that you have, and then ask them what the main ideas were. In a lot of cases, you'll just see people just be like, and that you don't want that at all. Like, they should know what it is, or at least have some idea of who you are as a company.
You have another interesting slide. I'm going to ask you about this, then we'll go on to a couple other last questions. Slide 57 talks about how do we get field-focused data. You have a cool chart that says time on site, frequency, location, device, assisted conversions. What are you referring to with field-focused data? Or does this mean we're trying to infer the emotions from the data points that we're analyzing?
Mm-hmm. Like, these are the areas in analytics where you can try to get that picture of the person behind who's coming to your site. So time on site, like how long are they staying? Do they have a ton of time on their hands, or are they like the 30-second people that are, just coming in and out? Frequency, is your site so engaging that people keep coming back because they love it so much, or are you just a one-time thing that they convert, which is good too, or is it something they need to convert a bunch of times? Location, where are they? I mean, if you have people that are all like in a certain area, like in England, you probably don't want to use kind of American jokes and that kind of, or maybe change the spelling of different words, right? So how can I change it based on that? Device, there's a completely different mobile experience rather than a desktop experience. Are you speaking to that, yes or no? And that's so important, because if people are on the go, can you answer their questions on the go or not? And then lastly, assisted conversions. So did they check a bunch of your social media posts? Did they go like all these different areas? Like, what are the things that keep capturing them so we can do that again? So all these things get you the type of person that's, you get a nice framework of like, this is who that person is, and this is why we should maybe take some time to, if it's not, on the other side, on the flip side, if it's not the person you thought, like, what is happening with your marketing? Like, right. If you're looking for that, fast-moving, high-powered lawyer, why are you getting on the other side the mindfulness guru that's loving your stuff? Like, are you sending the right message, yes or no? Yeah,
I like that. You've got that little matrix of the 4 different site visitors in those slides as well. It's funny, you mentioned being aware of how you yourself perceive sites or feels about sites when you land on them. And it's interesting because as somebody, I'm sure like yourself and like myself, where I've studied this so much, I can like switch brains a little bit from being each of those types of 4 users and try to relate to all of them. And I think that's a worthwhile exercise. So I wanted to ask you a couple quicker questions. One, you tweeted a little while ago about CRO. I think this might have been a quote from Pip Laja, who's been on the show. And the tweet says, I hate the term conversion rate optimization because it's not really a rate we focus on. And was that Pip's quote? I think you were tweeting maybe from a presentation he did. And if so, I assume you tweeted it because you agree with that. And talk a little bit about that. Why is this not a rate we focus on?
I think it's different for every company. Like, if you're a publishing company, conversion rate's not a thing. Traffic is. Like, clicks are actually a thing, which people are like, oh, clicks are never a thing. You don't want. It's just like, no, like, that's how they make their money, and that's important. And like, conversion rate at that point isn't important. It's click-through rate. Like, are they coming into your site? Are they saying, are ads being shown? Are we making money? On the conversion rate side, you can have conversion rate that's super high on a page that doesn't matter, and you could be optimizing down, like, at the end of the day. So it's mostly, in some cases, conversion rate is the thing that you're looking at when you're in PPC and you're trying to get a good conversion rate for a page. I will only focus on that one metric, and it will usually get me the results that I want. So the idea is take a step back and really see what metric is important for what you're doing, and do that. Don't just put all your eggs in one basket and say, like, conversion rate for everything, because that's what conversion rate optimization is, and I have to follow that. And so I like that quote from it, because I think it's important to make that decision before you start going into testing and then saying, well, I increased conversion rate like 4%. You're like, that led to nothing. So yeah.
You mentioned in a recent interview on Uberflip, I believe you were on their podcast, I'll put it in the show notes, that sometimes you only target maybe just 3 keywords in a PPC campaign. I found that fascinating. I'll open up these PPC accounts for clients. I don't do PPC, but I can look at them. And there's so many keywords in there that I'm just like, where are these even coming from? They're wasting money. Talk about this approach of targeting such a small amount of keywords.
So this came about because I was working for a SaaS company that focused on employer recognition. And when I came into the company, I mean, they had this gigantic, I think it was like 300, 400 keywords. And you're looking at it, and none of them are really getting you anywhere. The budget's so low that nothing is really spending, so you have to look at things in like a year-long outlook to really get a big picture. And it wasn't speaking to the user intent. So I started cutting it down and cutting it down and cutting it down, and started looking at kind of what was left of the keywords that seemed to be getting a good click-through rate. So people seemed to be interested in what we're doing. What could the landing page look like to kind of match that experience? So in a lot of cases, we found out that people were looking for like a guide to recognize employees. So we created a landing page with a white paper, gave that away, and that was a great foot in the door for our sales team then to contact them. And so we started working around that. But after 2.5 years of just looking at that conversion rate and looking at the stuff that was coming in, I wasn't going to leave a keyword there just because it gets one conversion every 3 months. It's like, sometimes you're either a pauser or a deleter. I'm like a total deleter. I get it out of my face. I don't want to look at it. And it ended up being that there was only 3 keywords. But we increased leads like something ridiculous. It was like 25%, 50% year over year. And that's huge. And it came out to revenue. It like equaled revenue. So when an agency came in, they saw my account and they went like, what is this? Like, this is awful. Like, we can't have a campaign like this. You can't run it like that. I'm like, well, it's the only keywords that work. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to have to redo everything because you obviously aren't doing it right. And they did. And all those leads went away because now they went back to the 300 keywords that didn't work. And they had all these ideas of stuff that they wanted to do. But when you have 300 keywords and you're trying to create messaging for each of them, that's a different message for every keyword. So you have to really take that, and to create something like that, it's not just, don't just bring it all to the homepage. It's not going to work. So it was an interesting thing to look at. In a lot of cases, like, a lot of people don't have, I guess, my background was I worked in an area where we had 30 sites that we had to optimize at a time for a publishing company. So it became all about just getting that end number, deleting everything that you can, and just focusing. So I had that experience behind me, but I think PPC people aren't comfortable because they've never had that situation. So they're just doing it the way that Google AdWords tells them to. And I think that it's a risk to delete everything except for 3 keywords, but in some cases it can really help you.
Yeah, and I wonder if Google AdWords is just trying to get people to spend more money sometimes.
Of course. Because that's their end goal.
Yeah. So was this actually 3 exact match keywords? Was this phrase match? Or was it just a purely exact match?
It was phrase match. It ended up, but not broad. Like, broad didn't work. Exact match was a little bit too much, but you still got the guide to employee recognition and all those.
Are you saying when they added the hundreds of keywords back in, were you still running those original 3 phrase match, and then those leads and conversions went away because now the messaging was too diluted? Is that what happened? Or they just stopped running those 3 when they added the others back in?
Oh no, they were still running it, but now the budget was going all different directions. So once you allocate the budget to like the 300 keywords, that's not getting the it was for a while because it was still the best converting, so Google will still optimize it for that. But after a while, it was just trying to find new keywords, so you get these like slumps, and the sales team's starting to get angry, and it's a different. And at that time, I wasn't the PPC specialist. I was now like a senior manager, so I couldn't exactly take it back. But yeah, it was an interesting thing to watch in that case.
I have a few more questions. Do you have a couple extra minutes? I know we're a few minutes over.
Sure.
Excellent. So you answered in Growth Hackers the other day, like a blog post length almost question about setting quarterly goals. I think you should turn that into a post or piece of content, by the way, if you haven't already. It's a really thorough answer. Somebody asked, how do you set quarterly goals for the people on your marketing team? And your answer was great. It gave a lot of tactics. The part of it I'm wondering is, because you talk about like starting at the top of the business goals and then bringing that down, and basically you're just slicing that to get to very specific things that you check on quarterly and so forth. The part I'm wondering about is, how do you stay focused on these goals once you set them? I can imagine even in like a growth hacker's mindset, like you said a little earlier, it's easy to get a little distracted and want to jump from one thing to the next. Like, how do you yourself stay focused on goals that you set?
As a manager, your full job is to make sure that people know the end goal all the time. And if that requires you to get everyone together on a Monday and ask everyone what are they working on, and also keeping track of what they said last week, and say like, I thought you were working on this. Why aren't you focusing on that tactic that you did before? And really keeping people aware of what they said before, and keeping them on that task. So sometimes managers just let their team roam because they're saying they want them to be independent, but they can be independent, but you hold them responsible for the things that they say, or else you're doing a bunch of things at once and nothing happens. And then on the Friday, people say whether or not they did it, so they're held accountable for it. But also, this is the goal. Like, everyone is drilled in. And I had this amazing manager back when I was at the employee recognition company, where we did this one-on-one every week. And he would spend half of it asking you about your personal life. He'd spend the other half asking you about your work life. And so he would be able to get context from your personal life of why that could be affecting your work. And at the end, you're kind of looking for answers and looking for advice, but he would never give it. Instead, he would just tell you, this is your goal for the year. This is it. Nice. And because he kept you focused, every time you got in, you got a little bit more fine-tuned and a little bit more tactical. And it came to the end after like 2 years of me doing this every single week, where I'm like, okay, I'm doing this and this and this because I know the goal is this. And he's like, I trust you, you're right, and move on. And I think that I never didn't know what my goal was, and I loved that, and I thought that was really important. And he made sure that he was held accountable for it, and that he reminded us constantly. And that's your job as a manager.
So it's really people it's like having a gym buddy almost, like you're using the other people to keep you accountable, essentially. I think that makes sense. Is there a way that you deal with that now as an independent consultant? Are you still having your clients help keep you accountable and focused on the goals? Do you have other consultants? Like, how do you deal with that now that you're not in-house at a company?
On the side project side, like with Flojo, for example, I have a group that we meet every Monday and we say what we're going to work on, so that we're held accountable on that side.
There you go.
And for consulting, I mean, that's why I went to project-based, because I was being held accountable for their goal when it's the manager's job to be doing that. And I say that freely. It's like, I'm not going to take on your goal because I'm not in there motivating the people. That's what you do. And I think and a lot of times technical people get put into manager roles, and they're not necessarily, they might not necessarily want them, and they might not be necessarily good for them. And I think that by throwing that kind of job to an agency or consulting, it's not responsible for an agency to be taking it on, because they're not in there every day knowing. And I think that it means that the manager's not doing their job, and it's going to affect the company eventually.
Like that. So I want to ask, how do you keep up with growth hacking? Is it just you go to growthhackers.com? Are there certain people or other websites you follow? How do you keep up with that?
I have a lot of different groups of marketers, not even just marketers, business people, developers, and I think that having that nice network of different, either Slack discussions, or I have a group of girls that I always talk to, like Joanna Weave and
Copy hackers, right?
Talia Wolf and Nicole Demir. Like, we sit there and we kind of analyze different problems and stuff all the time. So being able to have these different perspectives in different groups, not only are people sharing articles all the time and you're getting it that way, but you're also able to ask different groups different questions to get different perspectives all the time, which is me, the asking question queen. Like, that that's what I do, and that I stay ahead. And for me, like, a lot of the time, what I don't like, and I'm sure you feel this way about SEO as well, is the new thing comes in and everyone jumps on it, and that's the new thing. I like to wait until things settle, and I won't jump on a new tactic, or I won't jump on something. I want to wait, like, I'll know it, but I want to wait like a couple months and see if it's still high up there, if it's still kind of floated to the top, because you can't keep following around everything. And not every change in SEO is crazy. Like, SEO, things have changed and gotten different, but the idea of it hasn't changed. And I think when I teach at McMaster University, and the biggest question I always get is, well, what happens when an algorithm change? How do you keep up with that? Like, what if your whole job changes? And I'm like, okay, just ask the question of how, like, go into Moz and say, how does this affect my job? Ask that question, get the answer, and then move on, because that's part of the nature, and there's a lot of change, but it's not these crazy waves that are going to change everything that you do. It's still fairly slow when you think about it.
I absolutely agree. That brings me to an interesting thing that you retweeted from Fideo is his Twitter handle, and I'm bringing up his name. I have it right here. Paul Shapiro. I believe he created a microsite called Stop Saying from an SEO Perspective. And it still exists. It's from an SEO perspective.com. You retweeted it and then replied with a GIF video of people giving a standing ovation. So I imagine you were supporting that perception there. So why, I guess, how do you interpret what he's saying there? Stop saying from an SEO perspective, and why do you support that point of view?
Because rarely in a group, the SEO is actually saying it, number one. So you'll have someone who thinks that they know SEO and they're saying from an SEO perspective, and you're like, we've already failed. Secondly, if you're an SEO in a company, you should be the person, like the developer, everyone should be using SEO as a guideline. So it's not from an SEO perspective. We're not looking on the outside in. We're all sharing the idea that this is the way you're supposed to do things, period. So it's not an SEO thing. It's a website development thing. It's what we're doing in our project. This is the rules thing. And as soon as you do that, it's something that you can either take or leave. So if I say from an SEO perspective, I think we should do this, they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll take that into consideration. It's like, oh, no, I'm sorry. You got that wrong. This is what we're doing because we have to.
I see. I experienced the flip side of that, where oftentimes clients will say, we're migrating, or we're like trying to figure out our URL structure from an SEO perspective. What should it be? And then my answer, and I must sound like a broken record, but my answer always is, well, it's really good for UX, it's good for CRO, it's good for just web design. Like, there's no separation in my mind as well of SEO and then everything else. They all work together, and SEO oftentimes, especially nowadays, is trying to reflect the best user experience, the best design, the best web development practices. So I found that very entertaining, that quote there. So one or two last couple quick questions. You mentioned CSI. What's another favorite recent movie or TV show along the lines that maybe inspires you with psychology and marketing?
Weirdly enough, Santa Clarita Diet. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix. Oh, it's hilarious. It's like they found a way to take something gory and that should be gross and made it so funny. And I always love the mixture of something where you're like, ew, and then laughing 3 seconds later, and to kind of shift your emotions like that. And when you take a step back, you're like, how can I do that? Maybe not like showing someone vomiting all over something for a company and then making them happy, but it's that moment of taking when you're looking at a YouTube video about something that you would normally think is very businesslike or whatever, but they have like a nice sad or emotional story with it, and it kind of just makes you stop. So that in the back of my mind, that was kind of rolling. It was just like, I love that.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know if I've said this in the podcast before. One of my favorite movies, it's going to seem out of left field, but it's this movie called Sideways with Paul Giamatti. It's from like 10 or 12 years ago or something. But the thing I love is that about that movie, where sometimes when you watch it, you interpret something as funny. And then the next time you watch it, it's actually sad or depressing. And there's always that tension and that mix of emotion that's just pulling you back and forth. It's not just this vanilla, dry, like, silly comedy, right? It's actually got some drama. It's got some dialogue. It's got some character. And I agree. I love finding ways to incorporate that into content, into marketing. I think it's super powerful to be able to mix those emotions, because that's more like real life, isn't it? It's not, real life isn't just like things are just funny all of the time, And
even the people that they chose Drew Barrymore, who's usually like the goody two shoes, and like she eats people. And then like on the other side, her husband played Hitman, and now he's like this funny, quirky like husband. So they found all these ways to create layers. And another thing that I think is important in psychology, or you learn this when I study a lot of body language and stuff in the past, and people, when you meet someone, and what makes someone interesting when you meet with them is that they're this and that. So they're smart but silly, and they're funny but super serious at times. And that's what makes them interesting. If someone was just funny and they just show you that side of them, then you're going to be like, oh, they're cool, but I'm bored. Yes. And so like when you're a company and you're trying to market yourself, try to have those. People are sometimes so afraid to show like a different side, but that's what makes someone like you. It's like copy hackers. When you look at Joanna, for example, her stuff is like, it works. It's like smart, but at the same time, she's quirky, and all her emails is very personable. And that's why you just keep coming back, because you're like, you can't believe she could be writing this way and actually get results. And I like that, and I think that's what makes people successful.
That is so true. Those dynamics pulling in different directions, the contrast, I really like that. So just one more time real quick, tell me about Flojo and where the listeners can find this if they're interested, and then also, your Twitter, your personal website, all that stuff, where you are online.
Sure. So Flojo was a company that I started because one of the biggest things I noticed was that when people did try to look up growth hacking tactics or growth hacking ideas, the first thing is like, I'm going to go search the internet. And 3 hours later, they're still at that desk and they're still trying to search for stuff. And you're like, what happened? Like, where did you go into like the black hole? And they're like, I don't know which tactic to use or whatever. And they get overwhelmed. I created a box, and it's just, this is where you start. Here are, if you're stuck on how to think about it, how to acquire, how to convert, how to retain, how to get your customers to advocate for you, or how to cash in, here are 20 different tactics that you should use. And it's in a box. Start there. And
so a physical box with no internet connection, nothing.
No, we're getting tactical, because I think that's the other flip side, is you're expecting a solution on the internet because it's an internet problem, but maybe it's a problem that you need to take a step away from the internet, and it's tactical. Yes. And so I created this thing so that you can walk around with it. So you can sit on a couch and go through it. So you can talk in a group in a meeting and just carry it, and you're not searching the internet for the answers. And I think it's really good. It's starting with the growth hacking box. Right now I'm working on SEO, and it's going to be CRO, PPC, and the whole thing. So there's going to be 100 ideas in every box, and it's going to go from there. So you can find it on flojo.co.
That sounds really cool. I want to check out that SEO box. So where else can we find you online? Twitter, LinkedIn, your website, all that stuff.
Tiffany daSilva on LinkedIn, Bella Stone on Twitter.
Bella Stone, where's that from?
I don't know. It was just like a weird dream I had when I was a kid, that I was talking to two friends, and one was named Bella and the other was named Stone, and it just like, it stuck to me.
That is funny.
And then tiffanydasilva.com as well.
Spell your last name for the people in their car. They're not.
Sure. D as in David, A, S as in Sam, I-L, V as in Victor, A, daSilva.
Excellent. So everyone check out FloJo and say hi to Tiffany online on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you want to find her. It's been great having you on this episode of Experts in the Wire, so I think we're going to wrap things up there, but thank you again, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thanks for having me.